The whole station shook, and I dropped my mop. I felt it in my boots before I heard it, a deep groan of metal bending somewhere below the old cargo bay. Alarms did not go off. That was the strange part. 10 years on this dead relay station, and I know every sound it makes when it is angry, and this was not one of them. This was something new, something that had punched through the outer hull and did not care what it broke on the way in. I grabbed a flashlight instead of calling it in. Bad habit of mine always has been. See first, report later if at all. The cargo bay was full of smoke and sparks when I got there, and in the middle of it sat a scorched escape pod cracked open like an egg. I should have turned around right then. Every rule on this station said quarantine first, walk away, let the automated systems handle contamination. But I heard crying. Not human crying, something higher, thinner, more desperate, and I have never once in my life been able to walk away from a sound like that. Inside the pod were two of them. Small, wet, shivering, with skin that shimmered faintly blue under my flashlight and eyes too large for their little faces. Their throats pulsed with soft light every time they cried, like tiny lanterns flickering under thin skin. Whatever they were dying, and they were alone, and nobody was coming. There was a symbol burned into the side of the pod, half melted, but I recognized enough of it. A crown wrapped in 3 broken rings. I had seen that symbol on a wanted bulletin only 2 months before, on a woman the coalition called a war criminal, a queen who had vanished after a purge that killed half her own bloodline. If these were her children, then reporting them meant one thing. Someone would come to finish what that purge started. I looked at those 2 small creatures shaking in the wreckage, and I made a decision that would follow me for the rest of my life. I picked them up, one under each arm, and I carried them home. My name is Callum Ashworth, and before that night I was nobody. Just a janitor on a station most maps had already forgotten. After that night, I was a father, whether I was ready for it or not. The first year nearly broke me. Nobody warns you how hard it is to raise something you do not even have a name for. I learned by watching. I learned that they could not eat human food, but they could eat the same nutrient paste we fed the hydroponics bay. I learned that the glow in their throats brightened when they were scared and dimmed when they felt safe, so I made it my job to keep that glow soft and low every single night. I learned to sleep in short bursts, one ear always open, because if one of them so much as whimpered, the other would panic too. I gave them names because I could not keep calling them Subject 1 and Subject 2 like some file in a lab. The girl I called Marin, because the first time she looked at me her eyes reminded me of deep water. The boy I called Toby, because it was the only name that made him stop crying long enough to blink at me. I told the station administration I had taken in 2 refugee children from a transport accident. Paperwork gets lost easily on a station this old, and I made sure it stayed lost. I called in favors I did not know I had. I worked double shifts to pay for things they needed that a janitor's wage was never meant to cover. Nobody asked too many questions, because nobody expected a quiet man who mopped floors to be hiding 2 children with secrets big enough to start a war. Years moved faster than I expected. One day I was teaching Marin to hold a spoon, and the next she was correcting my grammar and beating me at cards. Toby grew into a boy who picked fights with anyone who called him strange, and I spent more evenings than I can count sitting with him afterward, telling him that being different was never something to be ashamed of. I never told them what I suspected about where they came from, not because I wanted to keep secrets, but because it never once felt important. To me, they were not a queen's lost bloodline. They were the 2 who fell asleep on my chest during storms, who saved me a seat at the mess hall table, who called me father before they even had the words in their own language for it. 10 years passed like that, quiet, ordinary mine. Then the sky broke open. I was walking Marin and Toby back from their evening classes when the whole station lit up red, not from an alarm this time, but from the shadow of something massive blotting out the starlight through the observation windows. A warship, the kind that did not need to announce itself, because its presence alone silenced every other ship in range. It dropped out of faster than light travel directly above us, close enough that I felt the tremor of its engines through the floor. Toby grabbed my arm. Marin went very still, the way she always did when she was afraid but refused to show it. We are always taught the two safest choices are to run or to hide. I have never been very good at either one when it comes to my kids. A shuttle descended into the old cargo bay, the very same room where I first found them a decade before. When the hatch opened, a woman stepped out, and I knew instantly who she was, even before the crowd of station workers backed away and started whispering her name. Vesara, the queen everyone believed had died in the purge. She had not died. She had spent 10 years hiding, healing, and searching every corner of known space for two children she had been forced to send away to save their lives. She did not walk like a soldier. She walked like someone terrified of what she might find, and even more terrified of what she might not. Her eyes moved across the crowd until they landed on Marin and Toby, and I watched a decade of grief break across her face all at once. She did not need a scanner or a test. A mother knows her own children the moment she sees them. I stepped forward not to block her, not to fight her, just to stand where my kids could see me. Because whatever happened next, I needed them to know I was not going anywhere. Vesara stopped a few steps away. Her voice shook when she finally spoke, asking if these were truly her children, the ones she had jettisoned into the void with nothing but a prayer that someone kind would find them before anyone cruel did. I told her the truth. I told her I found a broken pod and two dying infants with no beacon answering, and that I made a choice that night to keep them alive instead of turning them in. I did not apologize for it. I would make the same choice again without hesitating. Marin stepped past me first. She studied Vesara's face the way she studied everything, carefully, quietly, memorizing every detail before she decided what to feel about it. Then she asked the question that had clearly been sitting in her chest for years, even if she never had the words for it before now. She asked why she was left behind. Vesara's answer came out broken and honest. She said the purge came in a single night, an attack meant to erase her entire bloodline before it could grow. She said she had only seconds to choose between keeping her children close and losing them forever, or sending them into the stars with the smallest chance of survival. She chose the smallest chance, because dead was the only other option left to her. Toby asked if she had looked for them. Every single day, she said. Every system, every outpost, every quiet corner of the galaxy where a pod that small could have drifted. She said she had almost given up more times than she could count, until a communication relay finally caught a match to old biosignatures logged during a routine station inspection, right here, on this forgotten little outpost nobody thought to hide anything on. I felt my chest tighten at that. 10 years of careful lies, and it was a routine medical scan that finally cracked it open. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The whole cargo bay seemed to be holding its breath, waiting to see which direction this story would go. Then Marin did something I did not expect. She reached back and took my hand, the same way she used to when she was small enough to ride on my shoulders through the maintenance tunnels. She told Vesara that she was grateful to finally know where she came from, and that she wanted to learn everything about the world she was born into. But she made it clear, in a voice steady enough to silence a room, that the man who raised her was not a placeholder to be replaced now that the real story had arrived. He was her father, and that was not up for negotiation. Toby said the same thing in his own blunt way, arms crossed, chin lifted, daring anyone in that cargo bay to disagree with him. Vesara looked at me then, and something in her expression softened from grief into something closer to gratitude. She said she had spent 10 years imagining every terrible thing that might have happened to her children, and instead she found them raised with kindness by a man who owed them nothing and gave them everything anyway. She offered me protection, resources, a place among her court if I wanted it. I told her I did not need a title. I only asked for one thing in return, that Whatever path Marin and Toby chose from here forward, whether that meant standing beside her one day or staying right here on this quiet, forgotten station, it had to be their choice alone, made without pressure from either side. She agreed without hesitation, and something in her posture finally allowed itself to relax, as if she had been holding her breath for 10 straight years and could finally let it go. Marin and Toby did choose to learn about where they came from. They spent long hours with Visara over the following months, asking questions, hearing stories about a world they had never seen, slowly filling in the parts of themselves that had always felt unfinished. But every night, without fail, they came home to the same small quarters where I had rocked them to sleep as infants, and every night I was still the first person they told about their day. I never set out to be anyone's hero. I was just a janitor who heard 2 children crying in a wreck nobody else wanted to touch, and I could not make myself walk away. Everything that came after that, the sleepless nights, the lies to protect them, the years of quiet sacrifice nobody ever saw, none of it ever felt like a burden to me. It just felt like showing up, every single day. That was all it ever was, and it turned out to be enough.